Hello, hello, my green skins. And this is going to be a little bit of an editorial. Well, most of our podcasts are somewhat of an editorial or a review. This is going to be talking about the new age panic about Dungeons and Dragons. We had the satanic panic, which we might talk about a little bit, but we now have the brand new age panic. And it's going to be our little controversy topic. We're with Morg. Say hi, Morg. Eh.
Hello.
And we have our obviously the editor in chief and a good friend and one of my favorite persons to review a movie with because you never know how he's going to think about something. Dark.
Hello, and I've never played D&D ever, so I'm coming in from an outsider's perspective. And joining us now is Dragon.
Hi, Dragon.
Hi,
Oh,
Dragon.
geez, yeah, you made it. You made it. I was like, I didn't know if you were or not. I'm happy. We also have an ethereal dragon, another good friend, a guy who's worked with me on a couple of comic books and a couple other things that we've done. We've done on stream. Well, we've quite a few actually. You've been a part of quite a few Twitch streams and streams, Dragon.
Yeah, just
Yeah.
what I don't ton to do with Twitch thought.
Okay, so first things first, we're going to talk about our credentials. Well, Dark has none. Well, we'll kind of talk about how we got into D&D and then do the credentials. We'll start with Morg because Morg being the new guy to the thing. Go ahead, Morg.
Oh, I started in the early '80s with the Moldvay box set, the original red one that came out a few years before the later Menser BECMI one. But yeah, I've been playing D&D and games for decades.
Almost 40 years now, then.
A true veteran.
Yeah, almost.
Yeah. And me personally, I've been playing since the day of anybody remember the D&D cartoon?
Oh,
When I
Yes.
found
Yeah.
out,
Yes,
yeah,
and I hated it.
uh, blasphemer. Um, that show got me into Dungeons and Dragons, and I really did do some stuff for D&D, and I absolutely loved Dungeons and Dragons at that point. Now, I didn't play it the right way until my 20s, actually, because we were playing it like this fantasy D6 rolling. That's all we did. You either D6 to got the success, D6 to kill the monster, D6 to do this, D6 to do that. It really wasn't actually Dungeons and Dragons. I didn't realize until I played real D&D. And I played with one of the most abusive, aggressive, vile groups ever. And then I moved on to running the university D&D group, which pissed a lot of people off because I was still running second ed. Well, everyone wanted me to run third and fourth and then most recently fifth. But I refused to run any other edition. And I had some players get so upset about that because I don't know. These are some so weak. Yeah, it was just a kind of an interesting little thing where I kept running it, and it did become something that I had a lot of players come in, and that game world lasted for a while until a certain cough thing happened, and that pretty much almost doomed my group. So now I've been playing on Discord, period. Now I'm full time Discord DM. Dragon, go ahead.
I've been playing Dungeons and Dragons since the mid '90s. So when the edition came out with the player option.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you've also worked on a lot of other stuff, and actually, we work on a couple settings there that we've worked together with a couple custom games with a couple people, and we're screwing around with a lot of stuff over the years. But the reason we're here isn't to talk about our credentials, although our credentials are clearly vast, excluding dragons.
You mean mine?
We're here to talk about the stupidity and the controversy, the New Age panic. Now, for those who didn't see the Satanic Panic or weren't around for the Satanic Panic, that was quite interesting. Anybody who's ever, Jesus fuck the fun of that. Like the 90s never really got to see that, but the 80s definitely did. And wow, the stupidity of that was kind of interesting. I caught the tail end of that when I was a kid. And it was a lot of fun stuff with that, and it just got kind of stupider and stupider. And I know that's not really a word, but it got bad. But now we have a brand new age of this. D&D has been around and has been the Goliath that people have tried to slay for years. And I'm a little worried now that Wizards of the Coasts has been basically, desecrating the corpse, so to speak. It's going to get worse. And so the first thing we're going to talk about is feminism in D&D, or the lack thereof. Most interesting thing I heard recently was this hashtag, the girls are coming down into the basement, or, make way boys, the girls are coming down. Now, having us all played for years, do you guys, between Morg and Dragon, and have you guys ever heard of women not being allowed to play D&D?
Nope.
No. My wife is a GM, or has been. I mean, it's there's always
no,
been
I've
all kinds
actually
of people
played with.
playing.
Yeah, I've played with quite a few women in D&D. It's not something I'm averse to. I'm more annoyed with the fly by night
Yeah.
players, and that's been my biggest gripe, is the people who show up one session and then, oh, okay, fuck you, gone. Like, if like, I can understand if they have no
Casual
interest
players,
in it.
yeah.
Yeah, I have no thing on that. That pisses me right fucking off. Those are the players that make me mad. Like, you spend 2 days working on their character and then they just leave.
Yeah, there's more of those these days. Sorry.
The only
Yeah.
thing that comes to my mind where that states, and even then, it's not necessarily women can't play it, it's just they can't play with men, is in competitive professional sports. But that makes sense to a degree. No, that makes
Yeah, and
perfect sense.
this isn't
It's a physical activity.
competitive. This isn't competitive, and I find some women are actually better at the rules sometimes than the boys are. Like, there's a South Park episode that actually does a fucking good thing of that, where the women actually legitimately kicked all the boys' asses. I didn't know you could kill the DM, and it was like, yeah, no, I've met quite a few women that are really good at playing Dungeons and Dragons, and I've met some that really get into the role. I haven't had anything recent,
But
especially on Discord D&D, but Jesus fuck, I've had some amazing women players.
but in terms of like video games or card games, stuff of that nature, I've never seen a crusade, anyone going on a crusade saying girls can't join. So I don't know what they're
Yeah.
talking about when they say hashtag women are coming down to the base. Like, that sounds like an intrusive thing. It's like, well, you never were disallowed in. Just, it seems to me
No,
like you've got people who were never interested in it suddenly want to come down and
want to be
ruin the fun for those who do like it, including the girls who are already there.
Yeah. Go ahead.
There have been girls playing D&D since before D&D was published, because Gary's first playtesters were his kids. But demographically, they've been rare. It was, I don't want to say boys club. It was just something that guys like to do more than women traditionally in the 70s or 80s.
Yeah, I heard.
Or what have you.
Yeah,
But
I heard.
yeah,
Yeah, and we've heard
that
a couple
hashtag
people.
feels like, I don't want to veer into comics, but that hashtag reminds me of like when, Kelly and Gail, were going around saying, sorry, we took over comics. It's, that kind of a feel where it's like, but what are you talking about? This is a straw man. There isn't really an issue here in the way that, various activists are pretending there is. But I don't know. They probably just want something to do or feel important. Who knows?
Well, yeah, and that's not saying that. Like I said, the only time I've ever had an issue, and this is a boy thing too. I've had both with a fly by night. That drives me nuts. You show up and don't play, and I was like, well, why the fuck are we playing? Why the fuck are you here then? Like, I had quite a few girls that did that, and it drove me nuts, because it's just like, we want you to come play. We enjoy you coming and playing. We're fine with it. Just don't show up and leave. And that's not saying it always works out. I'm not saying it does. Like, we talked about that girls aren't, girls are in, and you could say it's kind of surrounded by the whole ideal of that girls play with Barbies, boy play with GI Joes, girls do this, boys do that. That's not necessarily fucking true. Even TSR, if I remember correctly, had its own, like, they tried to do a feminine branch or a woman branch in the game. I can't remember
It,
someone.
it did. It did. In '83, they tried to, start a whole department that was sending out like knitting kits and hobby stuff that women at the time, traditionally would be more interested in.
Yeah,
Yeah, that didn't work so well, but
yeah.
because they noticed that, yeah, most of their demographic and their customer base tended to be male, but it was gaming in the '70s and '80s. It was a spin-off from like wargaming, like Avalon Hill stuff, and I mean, yeah, there weren't many women doing that either back in the day, but they were always,
Yeah, well,
there
most
was some there.
Yeah, because most women aren't interested in doing that. It's a terror. It's not even a territorial thing. It's more of a, like, people just have that. Like, I think the best way I've ever heard it said was the spatial versus temporal thought process. Women are more spatial, men are more
Yeah,
temporal, and that's it's nothing against that. I've had quite a few women want to play D&D. So to me, it's like, eh. Like, the only time I've ever had some real mad gatekeeping is like when it's a lot of, like, the biggest gripe about this, and this is the only stereotypes, and there's quite a few stereotypes, is the princess that'll piss off both male and female players. And the queens, those are the two things. And these are two stereotypical things that we've seen. The princess is when a player, it's the girlfriend of the DM. So she gets all the special treatment. She gets all the equipment, all the gear, and all that. And then if she breaks up with him, he ends up quit. He ends up killing the game altogether because, oh, the girlfriend's not there and the relationship. That's the only time I've ever seen it go bad, go south, is that type of stuff. But that's again, that's emotional shit. Like, that happens regardless. That's real life.
yeah,
So I don't know,
yeah,
Dragon.
and
How
that's
do
it.
you feel?
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, sorry, Dragon. How do you feel about the whole shit and
It
shebang with
sounds
that
like a
girl?
bunch of real pioneers. Like, I'm the first to do this bullshit.
Yeah, yeah, it is. It's this freaking hippie movement shit. And I fucking hate hippies for a passion. I don't deny that I hate hippies. And because it's that mentality that we were first. It's like you were never ever fucking first. You were never first in the matter. Lots of women played it.
Emily was
Lots of
12th
women.
or 5th.
Yeah, no, you're the 20th or the 30th in most of the cases. And that's not saying that it's like girl female programmers. It's rare, but they do exist. It's just like people do good things. I've met a lot of one of the most famous one of the most well-known women who worked in video games was a music creator, and she did some amazing music for video games for years, and she got threatened by Yakuza in Japan. It was actually interesting story about that woman. She had some interesting stuff that she did back in the day. And there are a lot of people like to forget this shit. That's the funny thing about it. And it's just like, ugh, it's
Yeah,
annoying.
because it's stuff they're not interested in. Was
Yeah.
the King's Crest created by a woman?
I think it was. I can't remember now if it was. There's a couple that were created by women actually, and there's a couple stories that were created, books and stuff. Earthseas was created by a woman, which is a really really interesting book series. If you ever get a chance to read it, um, there's some really good stuff out there, and D&D doesn't need that. Like, it's not, we're not kicking the ladies out. Although I do like my friend's favorite response to that when he read that hashtag. Oh, so she's bringing down beer and pizza.
That's
That's my favorite
that's
response.
that's gonna
Hey,
start a fight on social media, probably with the group that's bringing that
yeah.
hashtag out. Yeah, so much of this stuff looks like just invented issues and straw man stuff because
Oh, it is. That's all it is. It's
millenni-
just a
yeah,
straw man.
millennials and Z's call it, and yeah, it's like the Ministry song. So what? Sorry you were born too late, but that's just
Yeah.
the way it is.
That's exactly right. It is that. Sorry, you're bored too. Yeah, that's how I feel about it. It's like the hippie movement long since passed this. Gary Gygax was never racist. I don't think he was a sexist or misogynist. And I never felt that when playing his games. And the few books that he wrote, because he wrote quite a few books, his books were still also he never freaking I never read that in his books that he wrote.
With apologies, there
So
was a slight hiccup in the connection, so we
mhm.
missed a little bit of what Mug had said. Morgan
Okay.
said. I don't know why I said Mug. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Mug's good too. I will accept a Mug. That was one of Hallis's sons was named Mugs. Mugs Hallis. So Mug is good. Also, um, yeah, yeah. Again, we were just talking about how it seems like a lot of straw man stuff. I mean, there's not
It
really
does,
issues
right?
here
That's
the
what it
way
is.
younger people, yeah, assume there are, but they're just looking for something to fight about on social media or whatever.
Well,
And I
yeah.
mean, then there are people trying, they want to. Some people want to turn D&D into an activist type of game. I mean, and it never really was that as much as there were never really hard politics in it one direction or another. It was just about telling
Unless you played
stories and
Birthright.
fantasy and imagination,
But from what I
and escaping
understand,
the real world.
you could be literally just about anything you want in D&D. So what could they possibly have to complain about saying it lacks diversity?
Yeah, and that's the funny thing when they call it racist. It's like when they call J.R.R. Tolkien racist. I no, but we'll get to that as we
But
build into
but it's
racism.
but it's like I said,
Right?
like when you go on any gaming platform, like cards or tabletop or video games, online PvP, whatever. Um, Whenever there's a girl, she is always welcome. I've never seen a guy who's like, "Oh, it's a girl, get her out of here." I've never come across that.
No,
The only time, like
no,
I said,
no, no.
when it
It's
comes
when
to
you
physical
show up.
sports, when it comes to physical sports, that's the only time we will say no, we don't want a girl, but that's because we don't want to hurt them.
No, no, no. It's not even that. The only time it ever becomes an issue is if the person sucks at the game. And that is the only time. If you go play Call of Duty, regardless of who you are, because I've decided to play a couple rounds of Call of Duty, I heard so much fucking screaming because I'm bad at those type of games, and I heard
Totally
so
get it.
much screaming at you fucking suck, you blah, blah, get this fucking piece of shit, blah 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 blah. And I'm just sitting there listening to it. I don't have the mic on, because I'm just listening to these guys, and I start laughing and laughing and laughing. And so I sat around spinning around, shooting a machine gun, and just twirling around like an idiot, just shooting the machine gun up, just to watch people lose their fucking minds.
What's even worse,
And
what makes it worse is that these people who are yelling are usually the shitty players themselves. Like they try to go Rambo on the game, and they don't. Like Call of Duty is more of a simulator than it is a game. They
yeah,
don't.
yeah, but it's fun to watch. It's fun to watch. I love screwing people
Or,
that way, and
or
I
it's,
did that. But to get
yeah,
back to D and D,
oh, sorry. Yeah, it's angry 12-year-olds half the time screaming at you in video
yeah,
games
it
too.
really is. It really is angry 12-year-olds that sit there screaming at you. But I still love that. I just spun around with shooting in the air like a fucking
Oh
and this is
yeah, I used to
oh
play World of Tanks and I was really bad at it. And when I turn on the mic, I didn't turn it on often, but every time I turn on the mic, I could just hear my own team swearing at me constantly because I was not
yeah.
helping their side. But it was
Yeah,
fun,
yeah,
not for them.
exactly. So that's the problem. Like girls will go jump into this, and they're again, they're not expected to be screamed at. And they fuck up once, and you got a bunch of angry 12-year-olds going, "You're a piece of shit, blah 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 blah." It's like,
You
yeah,
know,
that's because you're sucking at you're sucking at the situation, and that's the thing. They don't want, like, that's why you just don't play open. If you don't want that bullshit, don't play open source.
you know
I
who
play in a team.
complains? You know who complains about lack of female acceptance in games? Anita
Mhm.
Sarkeesian. She says, "Oh, I want to
Yeah.
play video games, but I don't want to go around shooting people and
Yeah, yeah,
blowing
no,
up
no,
their
no.
heads."
Let's not talk about video games. We're talking about D&D. Although this is the funny thing, it literally was one straw man to another, just like the Satanic Panic. back in the day. D&D had moved on. They moved on to video games, which is the next big beast. And then the 90s were nothing but video games. But at the time during the 80s, I even remember hearing about a Dungeons and Dragons book burning. And
Yeah, that would happen in the South and in more likely in Baptist circles. The same people that burned like Beatles records were burning D&D books in the 80s
yeah,
at
they were
points.
burning D&D books, which was fucking hysterical because I remember they were burning Dungeons and Dragons books. And I'm thinking to myself, at the time, TSR is like, wow, they burnt, like this comic book. They walked in and bought the entire thing of comic book store. They didn't steal it, they bought it and then burned it. And it's like, well, that's Gary Gygax. You think Gary Gygax cared? Like Gary Gygax just was like, well, they burnt our books. Did they buy them? Would be the first response I would have. And I wouldn't give a fuck. Except fire to my books. Go ahead. More for you. Buy 1,000 copies of them, and I'll gladly, I'll gladly add kindling to the fire. If you're paying what 30, what was the PHB back in the day? $32 for a fucking PHB. So it's like, yeah, that's yeah, you're gonna. Yeah. So it's like, fuck, pay $32 for that, and that's what it was, and that's kind of where we're coming from with the whole feminism thing. This always stems into the video game verse, and that
I think that's a good example. Like Gary was very Christian. He read the Bible every day till he died. But people that were attacking it didn't really understand who he was or what the game was. They just saw something from the outside, didn't really look into it, and yeah, the Satanic Panic started.
Yeah.
It was a weird time.
Well, this is why we call it the New Age panic. That's why I'm referring to it that, because this is people losing their shit.
It feels
Now,
what I don't understand is, like,
go ahead.
Why is it so hard for people to understand that? Like, correct me if I'm wrong, but aren't the majority of D&D players male anyway, right? Like, why is it so hard for people to understand that when everything has a key demographic, and usually the target is male or female, age is secondary. From what I see, so it's like, okay, you may not see as many female players in D&D as there are guys, but that doesn't mean they're not welcome. But at the same time, from what I'm seeing, they just don't seem to be interested.
Go to an anime convention. The way I always look at it is, if you want to talk about the exclusion in geek culture, go to an anime convention or a comic book convention and see how many women are there.
Dude,
there's
anime is like all over the place.
A lot of women.
But
anime.
Do you know any women who love Fist of the North Star or Golgo 13 or Sakigaki
I do.
Otokojuku? Very few.
I know quite a few.
Really? Where are they? I've never met them. All the girls I know, well, most of the girls that I've come across, when they talk about online, they're always talking about, what's that show called? The one with the blonde kid.
Academia.
No, I'm talking about
My Hero Academia, Ghoul School, Black Butler. Those animes. I get where you're coming from, but what I'm saying is
that show with that guy. What's his name? That Tamaki character. I forgot.
I don't fucking know, and I don't care. We're getting off topic.
But what I'm saying girls is, watch that. Guys don't. Girls do not watch Fist of the North Star for the most part.
Yes, they do.
I don't know any.
I know personally. Women that have. I know women that start. Again, you're not 40. So you don't know women that are of the older generation that were there for Fist of the North Star, the original Avon Galleon, the original fucking Cowboy Bebop, not the new atrocity that's coming out next month or the month after, the new fucking, like, we were there for the older stuff. You'll see women in that like the older animes. It's not common, agree there. But it's the same thing with saying that, women don't like Fire Force. I know a lot of women that love Fire Force, and Fire Force is fan service fucking times 1,000.
Or on High School Host Club. Yeah, that's the show. I mean, they love that. They love Black Butler, and obviously, like you said, they love My Hero Academia. But besides the few you've mentioned, the majority I've seen tend to like those.
Yes, but they're
those other shows.
But they're 20-year-olds. You're not talking to a 40-year-old woman that's actually been there for that shit. You're not talking to the older generation. Talk to the older generation. They'll be like, yeah, I saw that. That was good. Like, talk to the older generation. I know quite a few women from the older generation that like Fist of the North Star. Well, literally, the fucking the opening song. Yes, I know, but that was the norm back then. You're talking now is a different fucking beast. That's what we're kind of talking about. This isn't a racist or feminist thing that we're going to get to racist right next. It's a generational thing. And then this is what it boils to. This is why I'm calling it the new age panic. There's this new generation that's like, well, I want it to be mine. It's my Dungeons and Dragons, not yours. Mine.
Oh
And it's
god.
like it's that's the truth. That's literally what this is. This is what it boils the fuck down to. It's not even wanting to actually play the actual beef and lore. Right? We're gonna get to the fucking lore in a sec. But it's literally that. And that's what I've gotten from this. And let's segue into the racism point.
Oh dear god.
This is going to be fun because we're going to lore dump
The
your asses and mansplain the
next
fuck
ism.
out of it. Yeah, we're going to mansplain the fuck out of this and lore dump like you wouldn't believe. First of all, the idea that orcs we're not gonna talk about the fact that orcs are somewhat inspired by Lord of the Rings, which they are, but we'll break down the D&D lore instead of talking about the Lord of the Ring lore because that takes it in a whole different verse. Orcs are black people. Drow are black people. It's not right for them only to be evil alignment in the monster manual, and they should be taken away from the alignments.
Yeah, that was weird when a bunch of people a few years ago decided that fantasy races were ciphers for real world races, and then kind of put a bunch of other layers on that and decided that everyone was racist and that they, should save
Yeah,
us from them. It was weird.
that is the stupidest fucking thing. And we do have people of ethnic minorities in the Discord in this chat, so it'll be interesting to talk about. So let's go into a little bit of a history of Grumsh, and I'm going to come from where my perspective is. I've actually talked to a couple wokers about this, and they were talking to me about how orcs are racist and they're black people and blah 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 blah. And I said,
How many brain
you
cells did you
know,
lose?
yeah, okay. First of all, orcs. There are multiple versions of orcs. There are like 3 in the actual books. They're from the original setting, not anything new from the newer editions. There are your standard pig nose monstrous orcs that existed because they exist, and then there's the half orcs, and then there's the Orokai, which I think are a combination of orcs and ogres making love. There's a scary thought.
My brain, that image. Why would you put that in
Yeah,
there?
yeah. Congratulations.
I think what do they call those Ogrillions or something in first edition? Yeah, like
is
half
it? Yeah,
species.
aren't they Orokai? I'm pretty certain they're Orokai if I remember correct. I can't remember exactly what the actual name.
Uruk-hai would be the Lord of the Rings designation, and then similar. Tolkien had a bunch. There were man orcs and goblin men, which were kind of half
Yeah,
breeds.
yeah. There
But
was a lot of weird half race stuff. But here's the thing about it. Here's the lore of Grumsh. And someone, if you could correct me if I'm a little wrong. Grumsh and Corellon Alethian, or Alethian Corellon, based on whichever elf belief you believe, got in a fight when Corellon struck him with his sword. He cut out Grumsh's eye, and the blood and tears came down, and that's the orcs. Orcs are created from a being of pure evil. This isn't interpretive. This isn't a myth. This is reality. In Dungeons and Dragons, they are born from a creature of evil. Literal evil. It's not a joke.
yeah, I forgot about that. They do have that. That is like the origin in like kind of core setting, or was if you're using
No, no.
Grumsh. They're basically born of evil god blood. That's
Yeah,
that's
they're
how it is.
born of evil god glove, and it ain't like the old Chinese legends or the things where people were made from some god, and it could be interpretive. The gods are fucking real. Loaf is real in the Underdark. When they decide to have an extra strong orgy, where they summon demonic beings to stick people's orifices on the spikes, she likes to show up and get a rim job. That's fucking D&D when it comes to the gods. The gods are fucking real in their setting. legit, real deities that have
Yeah,
created their races.
you can. Players have been fighting and killing the gods or being killed by them, since the 70s. Gods are big experience points if you can handle one, but I wouldn't recommend it.
Yeah, it is
But
actually. They
yeah,
are big.
it's they're walking around. You're still in the mythic age in most settings.
Yeah, and in almost all settings, you're in a mythic age. Even in Spelljammer, the gods are real. The fucking gods are real, so therefore orcs are that of an evil being. So them being fundamentally evil is, yeah, they're a raiding party. If you run into a group of orcs, which are anywhere from 1 to 100, or sorry, I think it's like 10d10 or something. It's some stupid number. It's like a huge thing. Like literally, you can create an entire fucking campaign about fighting all 150 orcs. It's a stupid number. They're always meant to be. They're a raiding party. Orcs are a problem because of this. Because Grumpsh has decided that his people are going to take whatever land they want, and that their people this is their goal. They take, they pillage, they plunder, they Goblin Slayer. If you really want a good example of what orcs are like, Goblin Slayer is literally what orcs are like. They raid, they pillage, they plunder, and it's not that it's not like their monstrous race is based off that. It's just like that. Now, here's the question I got to ask: how is any of this fucking based off a fucking off a black person? How
Isn't
is this
the
based
thing they
off?
said that the words they use to describe them is how people describe black people?
Yeah, that's bullshit. That doesn't describe a black person. That's insulting. We have a black person
It's
in chat, and it's like fucking, it's gross. We know quite a
Well,
few
because
black.
because they refer to orcs as savages or whatever.
Oh, they refer
oh
to them
yeah,
as savages. Ugh.
I think that's some an individual like social media wannabe activist at some point probably noticed that hey, all the humanoid races live in kind of the wilderness, and it's they think of it like colonialism or something. The humans and elves
Yeah,
and dwarves
they
are
really
pushing
did.
into, and that's not it's
That's not
fantasy.
true.
They are an evil race. There's not in the real world, there's no such thing as being born of or descended from evil god blood, but orcs are, and that's it's just the
Orcs
way
are
it is.
legit. Yeah, that's the actual truth. I
I
had
mean,
to mansplain a little bit
it's D&D
because
too. If you want to run a campaign or setting where you don't use Grumish and orcs are just another species, and like there's
you
nice orcs
fucking
that can
can.
be done. You can do that. Yeah, it's easy.
Yeah, there's tales of there's a Sierra game that came out that's legitimately fucking that the orcs exist there. Like you don't need to do that. Like the closest thing I've ever seen that made orcs look interesting was the series Blight, which which was about two cops, and they were like that was actually very good. Actually, I don't care what anybody says. Will Smith made that movie good, and the racisms there made sense because they literally made the racists in that, which was a good, which made it fun. Which made a good movie. It was a great movie. It was a great movie. I enjoyed every bit of that movie. And they're going to make another part. They're going to make a sequel to it, and I'm really interested to see what the sequels are. But it's just like Jesus fuck. I can't say but so much, but yeah, it's what the hell. And that's the thing. These are real deities. I've actually explained to people multiple times. No, this has nothing to do with any black person. Gary Gygax took his lore from Lord of the Rings and a couple other things. He never really took it from anything else, and he never went racist on this. There's nothing racist. Now, Drow are even more funnier because Drow, other than their dark skin, which is
Which
a
can be
tend to dark
which can be
blue.
different colors like purple.
Yeah, no, it's purple, navy blue, a black as onyx black, which I don't think there's anyone that's onyx black in real life, like that black. Like you have to be like, and then there's gray, a grayish skin color. It's their faces are more akin to European. I would have to say they tend to because they have the elongated faces. I guess that would be Ukrainian or something. It'd be along that line. That it's like your Korean or it's like that very long face. They have a very like their textures are multiple things. They're fundamentally from the Norse mythologies. If you want to get into the lore of where actual dark elves come from, and there's a couple other ones
Oh
that
yeah, I forgot about that. But yeah,
yeah
yeah.
they stem from actual things. This is actual research. If you do anything about the fairies and elves and stuff, it's there's a lot more information found in British folklore and legends. There's actually way more than any other location. Another good one is I think Norwegian and a couple other places that actually have a really heavy thing on their folklore. And you can really redo a lot of research and find out some good interesting stories. But dark elves are fundamentally that's what they are. But from this setting, they're based off a woman, the betrayer, another evil god. And the idea that they're only evil alignment and that they're black is just that, oh, that's the black thing. So in other words, you're talking about a race that enslaves people, drags them down, uses them as things in a society that's so fucking it's so it's so clan oriented, and it's all about betrayal. Like Loaf loves watching betrayal. Loaf is a fucking bitch. She's a right royal bitch, and she likes playing with her toys a little too hard. They are murderers, they are vile, and they are not good people. But every once in a while, there's a good god. And she pulls these people out of the darkness because that's the thing. Loaf lives on sheer terror. Again, the gods are real. Loaf is real. She is so real that the Underdark is literally partially part of her realm. That's the scary thing about the Underdark. The Underdark is actually legit part of her existence. It's it's hard to explain.
There is overlap since like 78 or 79 when D3 Vault of the Drow came out. There's like a portal, the temple there in the Drow city at the end that Gary came up with the first time Drow
Yeah.
came out, like some alternate modules. Yeah, there's overlap with her abyssal plane, and you go through that and end up in the demon web and get to fight her. I mean, yeah, she's very, as a goddess in the lore, was always very active with the world and the things in it. Like the
Oh,
giant
she takes
modules
part
for an
in everything.
invasion that she sponsored. Yeah, I mean it's.
Yeah.
And then yeah, as far they're evil and they have dark skin. And I think in either Forgotten Realms or World of Greyhawk lore or both. It's very similar for the Drow, but they were cursed into having dark skin or something
Yeah,
before
they
that.
were cursed. They were cursed after the fight.
Yeah,
Because what's her face tried to betray Lorien, Coralon
yeah.
or Lethrian Coralon. Yeah, that's what did it. And
Yeah,
that's
yeah. Female goddess rebelled against the head elven god, took some other gods with her, and some of the elves too, and that's how they ended up matriarchal. They
yeah,
happened to worship the god that rebelled against the other gods, who's a female. So they're
yeah,
a
and all
women rep
yeah. Even
society.
that's
Yeah,
another funny thing. That's another funny thing that that the black men that men in their society are usurped. They're slaves. It's actually worse to be a man than it is a woman than anything else. Like
they're
the
yeah
lower.
they're physically smaller too, but they're following a like a spider, like a Black Widow spider kind of
Yeah.
thing. I
Oh
mean,
yeah.
like
Yeah. They are. They
species
are.
where
And
it goes right in hand with that. There are some animal species where the females are bigger and the males are weaker. Drow happen to be like that
yeah,
too.
and that's exactly right, and that's how it is. That's always how it is. Unlike the unlike Coralon, where his elves are equal. Also, something most people don't understand is that elves don't fundamentally exist. All elves, including dark elves, don't exist like normal creatures. They don't reproduce, and there's only a certain number of elves. Like they don't have the same reproduction situation that other elves have. In their minds, their souls are only tended to a certain number. Coralon or Loaf have not created more drow or elves. This is why they're such a small number, because if there was more elves than there were other races, it would legitimately conquer the entire world. They would take over everything because legitimately It just things. So the souls of the races are constantly being reborn, which is a horrible thought if you think about it. Being a drow, because a drow would be like, well, great, I end up part of the Spider Queen, and I get reborn and have to be served the fucking Spider Queen again. It's a level of evil conditioning to these creatures. It's a horrible, like, if you think about it on some levels, a drow is a horrible existence. So the thing that makes me laugh about this is like everything I said is so fanciful. How the fuck could you even consider that being a race, a real race?
Because they don't
Other than
they don't know the lore. They don't
the
know the
lore, they don't
story.
care.
They just
They
see
don't care.
they look at superficial images like, oh, these are dark and they look evil, so
Yeah.
it must be anti-black, or
Yeah.
this is white. These characters are light skinned, but they're so powerful and they look noble. They It must be some kind of some white supremacy
Yeah,
thing going on there.
yeah.
It
What
must
always
be.
makes this funny about this is that this all this was created in the time in the time of the '60s, and one of the most freeing movement eras ever. I don't think Gary. I'm not 100% sure what Gary thought of everything, but I got the vibe from him that he was a very intelligent man, and from the few interviews I've seen, I never met the man personally. I wish I actually got a chance to meet him before he passed, but he always seemed like a very nice and a very calm and smart man. And so to think that this was a man that would, put something blatantly not until I think not until after the Satanic Panic did Gary actually put stuff in there that made it kind of you know the thing, if you want to take it there, some of the more aggressive stuff he put in later, and that was only based off the Satanic Panic. I think that was a response to the Satanic Panic than it was anything else. But if it wasn't for the fact that he was being attacked by them, I don't think he'd have any issues with anybody. So it just seems like the creators of Dungeons and Dragons weren't like that. So how can you take that interpretation?
You
It's
know, he
another
was just a
drama.
nice guy who liked telling stories and playing games. Yeah, I never met him. I ran into him once at Gen Con when I was a kid because in the intervening years before TSR and before the 21st century when he started, doing more stuff, he would he'd wander around Gen Con in his like Hawaiian shirt with a briefcase with like levels of his original Castle Greyhawk, dungeon,
Yeah,
and just look for pickup games. He was like, he was an interesting
yeah,
fellow and really smart too. Very well read. I mean, probably autodidact kind of a person. Just,
yeah.
taught himself all
So
kinds of
so
things.
yeah, like it's not like HP where he did. HP was kind of, as much as I'll defend HP till the day I fucking die. Um,
He said a few things that even in the early 20th century
yeah,
were like,
even
yeah,
even I
some
even
people
I
are
gotta
saying
go.
these things,
Yeah.
but not everyone. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I can't really. I gotta do the whole shirt pull. Even I gotta admit this. But again, that in his later years, in his later writings, you can tell that he softened in his situation, and there's stuff that's it. Gary never had that. Like out of everybody that I know, it's the same thing with J.R. Tolkien. And I hate to bring him up, but I don't want to go too far into that because we'll be at it forever. I fucking like the movies and shit. I won't shut up about that. And it's just it doesn't make sense. It's just like this guy clearly never had a racist bone in his body. And maybe I'm defending him a little too much, but I don't get that vibe from him. And it's just pathetic
Well,
as a whole.
if there's anything that's racist about this person, or if he said anything, the burden of proof is for these accusers to show it, to present the proof. Did he
And their
say?
proof is so surface thin. It's another straw man. And again, it's the drow. It's the orcs and the drow. Like
I,
yeah, yeah. You really, really, really got to. You
I
really
know,
got to
I
be
know.
like,
In the last few years, some feminists discovered that in first edition D&D, the female strength maximum for most of the species was a little lower than the male strength maximum, but that's because they're all sexually dimorphic species where the males are bigger. Except it flips with the drow. The drow have their strength can't be as high as the females. There was stuff like that built in. It was just, a
Yeah,
little
and well,
bit
that's the
of
thing, right there, right?
anthropological kind of. But yeah, they're reacting to that. That like that must have been put in there by this guy in the 70s, 40 years ago, to tweak women. Like, no, it's just kind
Eat
of
a
how
pearl of
science
power.
worked, and it was reflected in the game. But
Yeah, eat a
that's gone
pearl of
now. No one
power,
really
problem
cares.
solved. Yeah, I know, but eat a pearl of power and you fucking solve. Read
Yeah,
this
yeah,
book. And,
that's
yeah. It's so easily solved. It's the same thing with sex changing. Although, like at any time, I can put on a girl of feminine power and instantly become a woman. And I'm gonna get
yeah,
to
that
like
is an actual magic item that's been around forever. And there's forms of
yeah
alignment change too. Stuff can
yeah.
happen where your character suddenly shifts on a dime. Your gender can change. That's been in there since the 70s too. And then you role play, that new experience, or they switch you back if they find magic for that and you want. It's
Oh, well, I've had quite a few players threaten to kill their characters over that, and that's more of a masculine situation, and that's just poor role playing as a whole. But it's just funny that this is just like because this is something that's always been there, and this is what my biggest pet peeve is that they want to, and we're going to move on to the next thing. They want to make all the races equal in physical stats, except for the furry races. Of course, they get to keep their magical abilities and special techniques, but every other race has to be able to have all this stuff.
well, the
Like,
backs need to keep their dex bonus. They're cat people, so they're going to be swifter. But yeah, that's the weird egalitarianism with fantasy characters based on pretend races because it makes them feel better due to their black and white. I don't mean black and white in terms of race, but there's just something like I think it's like was
well, it's
mentioned.
like it's like
People
it's
looking
like
at this very surface level, cut and dried, arbitrarily, like all or nothing, black and white kind of stuff.
oh well,
Which is
this is
activist
why.
thinking usually.
Yeah, it is, and this is the same shit we had to say about just some guy said we just got to start gatekeeping these people. Now, like I don't believe in that, but a part of me is like Jesus fuck, like he ain't 100% wrong when he says stuff like that because
This is a joke, but I do tend to apologize to people sometimes when talking about gaming history. I'm like, yeah, we should have gate kept all the vampire players and goths and like drama college theater kids that came into gaming, and then we didn't. We weren't paying attention. I apologize to everyone, and
yeah
some of it
yeah
starts
yeah
there.
yeah. I'm truly sorry about inviting the Z's in. You got to raise them young to play D&D. It's like any religion. If you want to raise your kids, you got to browbeat them with the Bible a couple times so they understand. I don't
I
agree
think
with that. I don't believe in that, but
I think
I'm just
all of
saying
this stuff
that
in general, just before we go into the next thing, I think we're seeing the intersection of, generational differences, like you said, and corporatism. Big corporations are making gaming products. That was never a thing before, to the same degree. And, corporate overlords and bean counters and accountants think that, woke is themselves, so they're pushing it on us. And a lot of the player base wants that too, the newer
stop.
ones anyways, the new age players. And yeah, it's a bunch of different things, and it's kind of weird. It just all looks weird from someone who started playing as a kid in the 80s, like with all the
Yeah, same
politics and
here.
everything else.
Yeah. I started at a young age, and I played through that period, and it's to us, to the kids, to the people who grew up with this stuff. Like I said, I watched the cartoon feverishly, and again, if a great example of this is the image of the characters the characters in the D&D cartoon. You had every person there. You had every culture.
Yeah,
You had the poor, you had the rich kid who's a dick, you had the poor guy, you
like
had the sports fan, and you had the super girl, and you had the girl like the other. Like you had
the nerd,
everything
the
there.
wizard was a nerd. Yeah, the little, in fact, the little brother, like that was. It's not always somebody's girlfriend that they were bringing to the game, in the 80s who didn't really want to be there, like a casual tourist player. It was sometimes somebody's little brother or it was someone's cousin from out of town. But yeah, often it took the form of some guy's girlfriend. And that's my advice to everyone who's a DM or player. Don't use games as like a dating service. You don't need to anymore. There's Tinder, there's Grindr. Go do that.
Yeah. You
Don't
don't
bring
need
it to the
that. Yeah, don't bring that to the table. But we had it happen all the time. Like, it's just the way it was, and that's fine. Like, I used to have a little brother. Like, we had a little kid play D&D, and it was a really funny story about her. And she was it was so fun, so funny to do stuff. And I used to tease her all the time. Oh, you're so cute. And I'd rub her head. She's like, get off me, you prick. Or she'd say it with her lip, you prick. And she'd say it like that because I'd bug her. I'd constantly poke at her because it was just fun watching her do stuff. And she did some real cute things over the years. And it's like, I'm not letting his character die. And she'd run in and save this other player's character. And just like we've had kids, we've had grown adults. Like, this is something that can bring people together. It's not like Magic, where I've seen fucking fist fights break out over Magic. I have seen people bring people together. Yeah, and that's the thing about this whole diversity shit. And that this is what we're bringing up, the whole diversity as a whole and the whole stat stuff. D&D has been one of the few things I have seen fathers get to know their children better. I have seen gang members from two rival gangs sit down and play Dungeons and Dragons together. I have seen, I'm not talking about lesser gang. I'm talking about fucking, these guys tried to kill each other 2 weeks ago. I have seen friends that have done stuff. I've seen relationships actually bloom into marriage in Dungeons and Dragons. I've seen it go good. And I've seen people of different ethnic minorities. I had a kid from Korea, a kid from Kenya when I was running the university group, and a kid from Germany all at the same fucking table playing. And
that's a great international party as players go. Yeah.
Yeah, no, you get that when you run at the university table. That's one of my favorite things that's the reason I love university D&D is that you never knew who you had to show up. I had a pregnant woman show up once to play D&D. I've had you'd have all these things. It's some of the fucking most diverse things. I've even had a transgender person show up and play once. And there's a funny story for another time. But I even had a person that was transgendered walk in and sit down at the table. And because it was an open forum.
Mm-hmm. It was my experience too. There's always been representation and diversity. And I mean, there's horror. There's horror. Everyone's got horror stories for any kind of social demographic.
We talked about the horror.
That just means you met a jerk, not that all D&D players or people that play games are like that. I mean, but yeah, it's by and large. I never had any problems or never saw anything crazy. Yeah. You're right. The fist fights are in Magic. That never happened in D&D. Before Magic, it would be diplomacy or junta. People might stab each other. Those board games would get pretty tense, but not. Yeah, D&D was pretty friendly.
Yeah, D&D was usually pretty friendly. It all depends on certain things. I've had a couple horror stories. I have had stuff thrown at me in a Dungeons and Dragons game once or twice. I had an entire 6-pack of Orange Crush whipped at my head once, but that was because I did something so douchey it pissed people off. But at a game where you're just sitting there playing, it's just people just having fun on a simple little adventure where no high stakes are given, it usually ends pretty good and pretty quiet. I usually don't, especially if you have a party working together. And I've never seen a straight out violent fist fights. I've seen Magic fist fights break out. I actually at a con at one of the local Magic cons that was down here where we had a huge tournament. I saw several fist fights and someone get a broken bottle in his eye.
Jeez.
And
they were playing for Ante, right? And somebody lost one of their best cards.
Yeah. And the guy grabbed the fucking bottle of Ball's energy drink and smashed it in the guy's face. Yeah. Fucking yeah. It was fucking nasty.
That ain't worth it. I like playing card games now and then, but not to that level. Jesus.
Oh yeah, well, fucking Ante was fucking great, man. I saw someone lose his entire deck, and
Wow.
that's what we're saying as a whole. And so we're gonna move from the racial stuff because we kind of talked about just as a whole that's the species situation with the fact that they want to make it generalized. So, what was the controversy of? We're going to talk about the controversy of what's his face's Gary Gygax's son getting kicked from Gen Con. What happened there? Did anybody know exactly more? Do you know anything about that?
Yeah, Ernie did an interview, and Ernie's a really nice guy. I don't know him, but I know people that do. I mean, a lot of people know. Ernie's been around, he's still playing games, still running things.
Yeah.
He he just talked openly and freely, in a way that you don't in the 21st century when there's mobs of people wandering around just looking for somebody to say anything they can take. I mean, he got himself in some trouble. I mean, most people didn't really, with activists, I mean. It went as far as Wizards and Gen Con. He was talking about some of the same issues we are. So we're probably all going to get banned from Gen Con too if we do it wrong. Maybe cross a tripwire. But yeah, that happened, and he's in partnership with a guy named Justin Lanza who bought the old Gygax house in Lake Geneva and turned it into a museum. Um, uh, yeah, they had some issues with a social media manager too, who was kind of an edgelord, and once it, kind of turned into a small battle front, in the
Well,
culture
yeah,
war.
there was even I remember hearing a
Yeah,
threat.
that kind of worse. They
Yeah.
they replaced that guy though. And their response to getting banned from Gen Con was fine. We're just going to do our own convention in the summer in the Horticultural Hall, which they call that TSR Con. That'll probably be fun. I mean, that's where
Yeah,
Gen Con
and
started. It's a building a few blocks down from the house where the museum is. So,
yeah,
and I
it's
mean,
funny. This is the thing that pisses me off. Like, okay, I know Gary Gygax. The first thing I heard that was kind of funny. I actually broke out laughing. I said, "No, go for it, go for it." Gygax's son, if he does this, I'm all for it. He threatened to take the dungeon because he can actually. He does have own the rights to the name Dungeons and Dragons. He's threatened to take it away from Wizards of the Coast. I don't know if that was him or not. Like, I might have been that edgelord guy that did it, but if
that
he
was
did it,
probably, yeah. That's he. Well, no, he doesn't have any rights to anything. Gary didn't either. Hasbro has everything. Yeah, because when Gary left TSR in like '86, when he got run out by Lorraine Williams, he was only a minority owner at that point, anyways, and he and Ernie cashed in the rest of their stock, if I recall. So they didn't have any stock left. Although Hasbro, to their credit, when they bought stuff later on, I think they gave Gary a bunch of money or something as a thank you, and kind of but yeah, they
yeah,
don't
when
have anything that
Hasbro
like
had,
Wizards or Hasbro owns. Yeah.
yeah. But that made me laugh, and I hope he actually does something with TSR Con. That would be kind of cool to see a new fantasy game come out from the actual TSR source.
Oh yeah, the company, they call themselves TSR Hobbies, the people that started the museum, Ernie and his partners. And one of the things they're working on, I went to their website recently because I was doing some research for this. A version of like OD&D or basic D&D, something like that, a retro clone called Tales and Tots that's specifically designed to get younger kids into playing. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, Ernie's not really political as far as I know. It just turned into like a political social media slap fight, and you know how it is.
Yeah, and
The bigger voice usually ends up winning, and like Gen Con
yeah.
came in and banned him, and
Well, it is.
yeah,
It's like
it wasn't the. I've seen worse things in other places I've been in terms of like stuff like that, but it's Ernie's brother Luke came out and said, he's my brother, but we don't support this. But at least Ernie didn't get banned from Gary Con, at least, so that's good.
yeah.
But yeah, it was all a bunch of unfortunate noise, and it just didn't need to happen. I mean, in terms of people getting all bent out of shape about it, it just takes away from playing the
It
game.
takes
Sure,
away from the role. Yeah, it takes away from the role play, and what else can we say about that on that matter? Like I said, diversity exists in D&D. It always has. And there's a lot more that we could bring up. We could bring up the Dragonlance thing, but that seems like Wizards of the Coast just being fucking so stupid at this point. And
Contract stuff and trying to take that Margaret and Tracy really did come up with Dragonlance and a bunch of other people at TSR at the time, but
yeah,
for all intents and purposes,
it
they wrote
sounds
the
like they
books.
want to take the rights
Tracy
away
Hickman
from
wrote
it.
the modules.
Yeah.
They didn't. You know how Disney decided they just don't need to pay Alan Dean Foster anymore, even though they should. I think it feels like something like that, but I don't know a lot of details on it. But yeah, that wasn't nice to see either. A fight there between the Dragonlance creators and WotC.
Yeah, and that's the thing. We got to stop. It's got to stop this crap. Like this drama crap that's happening. And again, it's looking for a fire when there's no smoke. And
yeah, and I think in terms of diversity and the reaction and the kind of the take from more left-wingy activisty, SJW, whatever you want to call them, people, there's diversity and representation in terms of people who play it and what you can do with your character. I mean, there's no real problems. What they mean when they say there's not enough diversity is every campaign setting doesn't reflect 2021 cultural mores in terms of what we believe, in terms of how all these pretend economies, cultures work. I mean, that's really what it is. Like that's probably what's coming in 6e. Waterdeep and most of the nations of Forgotten Realms are going to be a lot more woke in game.
Yeah, we're going to get to that. We're actually going to get to that. First things first on the matter. When it comes to the idea that there's no representation, I'm like, Oriental Adventures. Well, they wanted to get rid of Oriental Adventures. Well, you're taking away representation. What about
they don't like that word, but if you research the hubbub about Oriental, it was. I think it goes back to the 70s, and non-Asian Americans in like college students and stuff had a problem with it first, and like taught Asian. Yeah, if you go to any country in Asia, they don't have a problem with the word Oriental or care. That's just that's like a really proto. Yeah,
I know, but that's the thing. They're taking away diversity by doing that.
Oh yeah. I was bringing that up because I remember there was some guys who had a Twitch streamer or something, some left-leaning gamers in the last 6 months were doing some shows about how, look, Oriental, that's a bad word, and it's they were trying to campaign to get Wizards of the Coast to change the title of the reprint.
It did.
Because they didn't like that word.
Yeah, well, no, but that's the funny thing. They wanted to ban the original books. I broke out laughing when I heard about that. Because in my mind, it's like you're going to ban a book that's like almost 30 years old and has so many. It's back to the Satanic Panic. This is why I've been calling it the New Age Panic. What, you're going to burn those Oriental Adventure books? Yeah, that sounds familiar. And to us,
I'm not burning mine, but they want to.
Yeah. Good luck on that one. You're not getting my fucking Oriental Adventure books or any of my other books. And the thing is about D&D, they had lots of representation, especially if you picked up the Dragon magazine books, which I wish they reprinted all those books. I wish we got a full reprint of all that shit. Because they had the Shaka Zulu. They had a little campaign. They had a campaign for the Panther Fire. So you could run an entire Aztec campaign setting. You could run an entire African setting. You could run they created all these little source books that existed that you could find.
Yeah,
they did, right? All these
that's been popular going back to the beginning of the game, that people want to explore either pretend cultures or cultures based on real world stuff to a degree, and just that's why we have, going back to the deities and demigods, the Celts and Norse gods and everything are in it, the Native American gods. I mean, it's just people who played this game are interested in history, or the original type of player. They're interested in history, other cultures, learning stuff. So that's kind of why, what do you mean every nation in the campaign world thinks the same things or feels this is boring? That's not what they want. And there are always opportunities to
I'm actually looking for
expressions of
Yeah.
D&D that weren't necessarily like Euro medieval centric. That's always been there. I mean, there's people who've been playing the game. In fact, the earliest version of the game was more like sci-fi fantasy than like medieval fantasy. It's not some,
Yeah, it was.
Euro. Yeah, yeah. It's just they don't know.
It's very similar to how Heroes and Mighty Magic kind of went around after later things where you could get fucking ray guns to shoot fucking dragons in the face. But yeah, no, it was signed somewhat like that. So there's all these settings, and that's the thing. Like a lot of people, oh, these settings don't exist. Well, that's because Wizards of the Coast errated all that shit, destroyed it, and decided to basically go with the most simplistic version of D&D. And so I blame Wizards of the Coast solely for this bullshit. And why not just make these books? Like, I wish like I said, I'm so pissed off to this day that TSR that the Trove is no longer around, and I hope we see other sources exist like that because I've been trying to collect the Dragon books as a whole, and I have a friend of mine who has every Dragon book, and me and him went and sat down when he was moving. We were done. We were eating pizza, sat down and read every Dragon book. And I was going through and I'm like, wow, there's the Shaka Zulu. Holy shit, there's a campaign, there's a complete campaign setting on Discworld in here. And oh, over here it has the Warlock. Oh, the Witch Doctor, this, that. Like there's all this shit and all these settings. Like there's this information upon information upon information in all these books that just does not exist and that they just kept writing. And then there were people that wrote their own books and actually opened up their own source information. So D&D has massive lore. And people seem to forget that, oh yeah, these don't. And this is why, like I said, the big company mentality, oh, let's create 3.5. Oh, we need to create 3.5, and 3.5 is completely different from second. Oh, let's create 3.5.1166. Or let's create fourth edition. Oh, fourth edition, and then when fourth edition bombed because everyone was pissed off that they had to buy a brand new source book material, even though they hadn't finished 3.5. Oh, let's create fifth. And now it looks like, people are making more fifth
No,
edition stuff. Like they've lost
that's
control of 5e.
it's more of the corporatism too. That the new edition comes out every few years. I think Games Workshop really kind of discovered the benefit of that first as big gaming companies go. But WotC quickly favored suit, and it was the accounting department realized modules only. They thought modules only sell to like DMs. That's not really true.
No, it
You
isn't.
never
I
sell
know a
as
lot
many
of players.
modules historically as you do core books. Core books are what sell, so that's why they like to do a relaunch every few years because they
Yeah,
get to
and
sell all
like
the core books all over again.
well, yeah, that's why we're living in the second ed world, and this is why I live in the second ed world because it's like to me in my mentality, I'm like,
It's
well,
a good
why would I
world.
want to? Yeah, it's a good world, and it's fully filled. It's flushed out. Out of all the other editions, it's the most flushed out edition out
That's a
there.
good point.
Period.
Yeah, there's more
Yeah,
supplement books, supplemental books, and it's the way 2E works like earlier D&D. It's not a closed system, so you can use what you want. I mean, if you want to find, like you said, if you want to find and read every Dragon magazine and convert every article from 1E or 2E and OD&D into stuff you're using, that would work. It would take a lot of time, but it could be done. There's
it
that
can be
much
done.
content out there, and it's crazy that so much of it is hard to find anymore and it's not being reprinted. And now that we've got people that are pushing on like, don't reprint it because it offends me because I was born after 2000.
Yeah,
That's annoying. I don't like it
Okay,
either.
it is.
so sorry to cut you in, but we have someone new who just joined.
Hello,
Sup?
Hello.
hello.
Hello, Serene.
Hi, Serene.
How you doing?
Yeah, we're actually just talking about the completionist of second ed. We brought up the diversity, and we'll let you actually have a female pit on the matter. We won't fully restart it, but we'll let you kind of sway in on the matter of the whole idea of the diversity of Dungeons and Dragons and how they're trying to shift 5e to all the races having a same stat, that you all get the same equal status, that there's no reason to play an elf really on some, well, on the stat points anyway. and how they're trying to equalize the races. So what's your thoughts on that?
Um, my thoughts is that Dungeons and Dragons and all those other role-play games from the time period, they've never been racist. In fact, I heard a little bit of your conversation earlier about the orcs being considered racist, and I just like to say the whole reason the whole reason people play Dungeons and Dragons is to escape real life
Mm-hmm.
for however long the campaign lasts. You get to be whatever you want to be for that period of time. If you want to be an elf, you can be an elf. If you want to be an orc, you can be an orc. If you want to be whatever you want to be, you can be. You could have white people play orcs. You could have Asian people play orcs. It doesn't freaking matter. It doesn't matter. It's the same kind of bullcrap we're seeing in the voice acting world right now, but I won't get into that. You don't have to. The fact that people, I think honestly, if you're going to say something is racist, then you're probably the racist. Hear me out. No one has ever said that orcs are black people until today, when racial division is at its highest. No one has ever said that. At least not in my recollection, and I've been role playing since I was like 13 years old. And I would think that when you hear the description they give of the orcs, and then they say, well, they mean that's black people. Wait a minute. So the person who's saying that the orcs are black people because of this description, aren't they being the racists?
Yeah.
Because if
Yeah,
that's how they're
I
seeing the
think
orcs, and they're equating the orcs to black people, that must be how that person sees black people. And that means that
there's
person is the
possibly
racist,
you're.
not the game.
I think nice to meet you, Morg. I think you're right. There's probably some projection going on there when that happens.
Oh no,
Yeah.
Yeah,
not
yeah.
probably. Not
Like,
probably. This is
I'm
basically
being
looking
diplomatic.
at the color orange. This is looking
I'm
at the
using my
color
diplomatic
orange.
proficiency more than probably. Yeah.
No. This is looking at the color orange and calling it yellow. Okay?
Yeah.
This is not just projection. This is turning something into something else because you want it to be that for controversy. That's all it is. It's not true. And as far as inclusivity is concerned, Dungeons and Dragons is one of the most inclusive games because you can be whatever you want to be. Hell, guys roleplay as girls, girls roleplay as guys. It doesn't matter what you are. The DM, for crying out loud, plays characters of all races and genders. I mean, and literally, Dungeons and Dragons is a world of inclusivity because the sky is the limit. Literally, the sky is the limit. Like,
Well, also
literally,
the
you can be a
players.
character that flies.
Well, also the players have always been diverse, right? Like it's always been like I've never run into, like I said, I've had black people show up and play. I've had people of we've had people of playing, and we've had a lot of stuff where I've had a lot of people, like I was just saying about this. It's like I had people who got married. Like I had a couple get married. I had a pregnant woman. I had a transgender person walk in and sit down and play at a university group. Like at one group, I remember one time university, I had a Korean, a German, and a guy from Kenya all sitting at the same fucking table playing D&D. So,
Like
and
I
that's how
said,
everyone does. Yeah.
it's the most inclusive game in the world because you can be whatever you want to be, and it doesn't matter what your skin color is, and it doesn't matter what the skin color of the character you're playing is. You can
Yeah.
I hate to use the old Dungeons and Dragons movie. I say old, but it's probably made in the late '90s, early 2000s.
Which one?
I use that as an example. It's the one with Jeremy Irons as the bad guy,
Yeah.
really
Okay.
hamming it up.
Okay.
But
It's the one
like,
with Damon
I'll
Wayne.
use it
No,
as an
not
example.
Marlon Wayans, isn't
You
it?
have,
Right?
Yeah.
yeah, you have this gorgeous black woman playing an elf. They didn't cast her as an orc. They cast her as an elf. Hello, people. Stop assigning your personal biases and prejudices to things that have nothing to do with it for your own personal game that you're playing. No, 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 no,
Yeah,
no. Knock it off. You're ruining
yeah.
crap by trying to insert your interpretation.
Well, and that's kind of where we were bringing up. We were moving into the whole fact that they want to do this, and like the idea of black elves has never really bothered me as much. Like Lord of the Ring, it's more about affecting the lore of the area. Well, I'm a lore junkie. Like I know they talk about making black elves in Lord of the Rings. I'm like, well, no, they existed past time before sun, so fundamentally they would all be pale skin. It's not nothing wrong with having a pale skin.
So
I
let's
don't
do
get
a
the logic.
biology lesson, shall we? Let's do a biology lesson. There's this
Mhm.
thing called melanin in your skin. Melanin adjusts based upon the UV rays that your skin takes in. Now,
Mhm.
some people have more melanin in their skin than others. I have a melanin deficiency. I am paler than the newly driven snow. I cannot tan even if I want to, but my sister can. Even though we're
Mhm.
sisters, two different results. Melanin varies based person to person, not just race to race. If you've noticed, you can have a black person who looks black as night, but you can also have another black person who looks more, tan or brown.
Mhm.
It's not a set thing. And so
No.
for someone to be like, oh, hey, well, you can't have a character this certain color, I'm like, who says? It's make
Yeah.
believe. It is a
No.
fictional
That's
world.
agreed. That's
Who
agreed. I agree
cares?
with that. Yeah, I agree with that. But Lord of the Rings is the only time I've had an issue with that. But that's again, that's more of a lore thing. But it's a silly idea for Dungeons and Dragons to have that because D&D there are elves that live in the deserts. There are gray elves. There are forest elves. There are avian elves. There are freaking,
There's elves all over the place. There's several different races of elves. I mean, I actually
yeah.
back in college we were given the back in college we were given the chance to do a free presentation on whatever we wanted. So I did a
Mhm.
presentation on different kinds of elves. And I made a little section where I was like, these are not elves, these are gnomes, and they're the ones that work for Santa Claus. Get it right, people. And I
Yeah.
thought I made a joke. But basically, by putting them in these boxes, you these people are actually making them less inclusive. They're actually trying to make the game less inclusive by putting them in these boxes and saying, "Hey, you can't be this because," or "These are these specific people because." Like I guarantee when Dungeons and Dragons was created by nerds and outcasts, I might add.
Well,
When
Gary
okay,
really wasn't
let
a
me put it
nerd.
this way. Well, let me put it this way though. Dungeons and
Well,
Dragons is
a lot of
typically
the other ones were. Gary was.
Yeah, the
Gary
other
was
one.
pretty
typically
cool,
though,
but the other ones were a
Yeah.
bunch of nerds. Yeah. No offense,
typically
guys.
though,
Well, yeah.
Typically, though, Dungeons and Dragons is played by social outcasts and nerds who know what it's like to be
I
hated
was.
and persecuted.
Yeah,
And
it was
so
it
it
was on some levels.
it honestly makes no sense for these people to come in and be like, well, this is a hateful game that's racist and it's so like sexist and it's so like it hates everybody. I'm like,
No.
dial it
No, we had
dial it
cool
back.
kids come play. I actually had a guy actually. I had not an Olympic, but he was I can't remember what he was actually called, but he legitimately showed up every day, and the guy was built like a shit brick house, and he would snowshoe to my apartment during the winter when we were playing at my house because I didn't want to walk because it was too cold.
Wow.
Yeah, he snowed. Well, I'm not that far from the university, so he actually would snowshoe all the way through the forest, and because he was actually an athlete. He was a core athlete. He was a track guy, a great guy actually. Fucking high as a kite 90% of the time, but great fucking guy, fun, and he was like I said, he was what we would consider the cool kid, and and he showed up and played, and he fucking had a blast. I had a tennis girl who showed up and played a couple times. Like, I don't believe this shit. Like, I don't, and I also had some assholes show up and play and do some real fucking creepy shit. But we all have horror stories. Again, you're meeting with people, but I had a lot of good that came from D&D. And so for me, as like I consider the outcast, although I don't consider myself that, but it's one of those people who might be considered the outcast. We don't like it when you are just defaming our thing that truly brought us together with other people. I've had some of the most fun moments in my life sitting at a table next to people, eating fucking pizza and talking about fucking Red Dwarf or Doctor Who while we're fucking setting something up. It's
right. Nerd culture. This is what gets me so mad about the PC culture invading nerd culture in general.
Mhm.
PC culture is destroying the most inclusive culture that exists.
Yeah.
Nerd culture is a very come as you are sort of culture. We are made of outcasts. We want attention. We love attention. We want to make friends, but we don't know how. Nerd culture gives us a chance to make friends, like you said, with people who we wouldn't necessarily be friends with. And for these
Yeah.
PC morons, and yes, I will call them morons, for these PC morons to come in and be like, hey, your game needs to be actually less inclusive because it's racist.
Yeah.
And that's what they're doing. They're actually
Well,
trying to make it less inclusive by calling it non inclusive, when actually it's very inclusive. And,
yeah.
and
When
it's so stupid.
What
it
they
is.
want is for emphasis to be put on certain groups, like to be at the forefront of how do I put this? They just want it to be the focus, like a much bigger focus. When, from what I
Yeah.
understand, it's not about that. It's just about doing what you want to
It's
do.
about having fun. It's about having
Yeah.
fun. It's the reason I don't believe in people using like I usually tell most DMs, like when they ask me how to run a campaign, I usually say to them, you're reactionary.
If you are playing Dungeons and Dragons because you want to create a world of your own, that's fine. That's one of the things Dungeons and Dragons allows you to do is create your own reality to escape to for a while. However, when you start putting the politics and mindsets of the modern day world, our world, Earth, into the world of Warcraft and the world of D&D and all of those other fictional worlds, then you're destroying what makes those worlds amazing. You're making it less of an escapism and more of just another platform to do your bullshit preaching on. And I'm sorry, but that is not okay. I touched on it the other day on a different stream. You are culturally appropriating. You are going into a culture that is not yours, nerd culture, and you are taking it and changing it to fit your political biases and your political needs. And that is not okay. You are making the game less fun and less inclusive by pushing your personal agendas. No one ever said you can't be gay in the game. No one ever said you can't be part of the rainbow community. No one has ever said that the main character of your quest can't be those things. Because D&D is about the world itself. You create the characters. D&D is the world itself. You create the characters and the story that goes with it. And that is what these people don't understand. It's not the world that needs to change, it's them. D&D doesn't need to change, they do.
Hello? Okay,
No,
am I back?
I can hear.
yes,
Yeah.
you are back.
Um,
Now, here's the thing. If I can
Go for it.
say, D&D is about doing whatever you want, but at the same time, if these people are going to put their political biases injected into the game, that will make people like me, a Middle Eastern Muslim, not want to be in it if everyone's going to promote things that's against my religion. So, where's the freedom of religion? My beliefs, my moral, my religious, my personal beliefs. If that's going to be ignored for those people, then yeah,
Well,
say goodbye to
Dragon, I
more
have
new players.
well, Dark, I have a special gift for you. There's a setting called El Qadim that takes place in the Middle East.
See, I would argue that even our religions don't belong in that game. because it's not our world.
That's
Dungeons and Dragons
I
is
think
not
this
about
is
Jesus. I'm sorry, but Jesus does not exist in Dungeons and Dragons. It's not his.
Yes, he does.
It's not his realm. Does that make sense?
I'm
He
just
he
saying.
wasn't. It's
I'm
not
just
Earth.
saying that if I saw a D&D campaign, if I was a player and I saw that they were promoting things I don't believe in, you know what I'll do? I'll just go to the next one. I'm not gonna get in there and be like, "How dare you believe this? How dare you promote that? How dare
again,
you normalize this and
again,
that?" I'm not gonna do that.
again, Dark. Al-Qadim. And yes, there is technically Jesus, quote unquote, in D&D. Gary was very careful about that. You have to go. You
he's
have to
kind
really.
of around, yeah.
He's kind of around. He's not in the
In
fantasy
Rift,
setting. He's in
in
the more
Rift we had
modern.
what was called in Rift,
Well,
which is a similar game. We had what was called the Megaversy, which is the god of that game.
Yeah.
The Megaverse was the god of that game, and he. I mean, but your races could believe in their own deities too, of course. But
Yeah. And that's the thing. There's multiple, like, there is actually, and we could talk about the other side. We've actually had a huge fucking argument about this. We've actually talked to, you wouldn't believe how many big brain arguments we've had. Like lore masters of Dungeons and Dragons have argued about the existence of Christianity, and it does fundamentally exist in some of the
There's
green.
yeah, there's
And
reflections of it in a number of
yeah,
the settings and yeah, early stuff. And like
even
World of Greyhawk doesn't have Christianity in it directly, but it does have Islam more or less. The Backloonish part of that setting. I mean, that's the more their god is called Al Akabar. I probably would have
well,
that's a little rough, but yeah, that's there.
my
Oh.
point is, it's not Christianity though. They're similar to, but they're not. That's my point.
Yeah,
The world
there's
has,
not a direct
Yeah,
cipher.
while it has
Yeah.
similarities, but while it has similarities, it's not Christianity. It's not Islam. They're similar, but they're not. And
no.
that is a mirror of our world, but it is not our world.
Yeah.
Stop taking
Although-
our world and putting it
Although,
in there.
Right.
First edition World of Greyhawk setting does literally have the Mesoamerican gods and Mesoamerican people. There's some humans called the Old Man, and their story within game is a portal opened to like Mesoamerican Olmec Earth or something, and some of them came through, and so you can worship Quetzalcoatl, and it is actually him in that.
It actually,
but and
here's the thing about it. Go ahead. Go. Okay.
One at a time, people. My
Serene?
stream cannot get you all.
Yeah. So Serene, go ahead. Then we'll let Morgan, and I'll say what I can say. Go ahead.
It was my understanding that the gods were in there, but they weren't actually gods. They were just seen as gods because of the power that they had. Because that's what Rifts did. Rifts by Palladium Games. That's what they did. They're not actual gods. They're like aliens or mythical beings that have been perceived as gods because of their long lives and special powers.
No, they're
understanding, but
you've got some of that in World of Greyhawk, but some of them are actually deities too. It depends on who they are. But yeah, the Mesoamerican gods are actually real gods. I mean, like the first edition had like Cthulhu mythos stuff like running around in the mix too.
Until that
yeah,
got
old ones
out.
instead of
yeah.
Yeah, there's humans and elves that ascend and were never really gods, but get powerful enough that their worship is their monster, like a dragon. Dragons worshipped by kobold tribe, all kinds of stuff like that. But in terms of
we gotta watch out for the whole because
what? I'm sorry.
We gotta we gotta watch out for the whole church thing because I don't want to give more ammo to idiots that don't need it, but. I felt like with everything, like I had a friend of mine, she's Native American, she plays D&D, and she read the stuff, and she's like, you know what? I had a look at it, and we were talking about it loosely, and she's like, and so she decided to play one of the gods from her own Native American beliefs because they actually do have those gods in there. And she's like, no, she respects it. She likes the fact that it's there. They mirror it. They don't go 100%. They never did. Gary was very religious as a person. and he treated almost all religions except for like the darker ones because he decided to be an asshole and troll stuff later because he did a couple prickish things. If you look at the Nine Hells, some of the stuff in the Nine Hells is hysterical. The stuff that he legitimately took in there, and he purposely did some dickish things just to kind of piss off the Satanic Panic. But it's all books that happen after the fact.
In that case, it's even more inclusive because it's.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah,
their
it was.
argument about it being not inclusive is 100% bullcrap. Even more so now because if he went to such lengths to be so inclusive as to involve other religions and their gods, then they have no leg to stand on. They literally
They don't. And this is why. Yeah, this is why from a lore monkey, from a guy like I said, I consider myself a lore master because I literally know someone who has every fucking Dragon magazine that ever came out, every Tower magazine that ever came out, and two of the other UK books, book series that came out. I think it was called Towers. I can't remember what the actual name was, but he has everything that's ever come out, and it's all the lore in there. You can find the Shaka Zulu. They have an entire write up of how to create Shaka Zulu warriors and all the side stuff, a little campaign spinoff. They have different. There's just lore upon lore upon lore that Wizards of the Coast has decided to drop all and just do a straight basic medieval because we don't want to put the effort in. We just want to fucking cough up fucking books, and
Yeah.
that's the truth. There's
And
so
yeah,
much
I agree
lore.
that reduces diversity, inclusivity. It makes it more boring. It's it's like
It's corporations.
Yeah.
It's a fucking big.
I think there's an element
If
of they don't want people to not join a campaign or a game if they're uncomfortable with certain things. Like you have to
Yeah,
accept everything,
probably, yeah.
and I don't. And like I said, my example, I will not. If I was to play, I would not play a game that is. Well, I don't personally. I cannot play a game. My religious obligation. I can't play a game that puts God with the Almighty God with other gods because in my religion there's only one God.
again, there's a
and that
game,
makes sense. Yeah.
and again, I gotta say it. There's a Dungeons and Dragons setting just for you out there. There is especially in second ed. There's a setting for fucking you. There always is.
Well, here's the thing.
And
God in Arabic is not called Akbar. I mean, Allahu Akbar means God is great, and Allah is
Yeah.
good.
Exactly.
So I question what they mean when they say there's a God called Akbar. That in itself.
It means that someone in the 70s who wasn't an expert on that stuff wanted to put a representation or expression of it because he was interested in that and history in general. But yeah, it's a little clunky. But that was kind of the point. Yeah.
Well,
but yeah,
again,
I think you're like in terms of looking at it from where you are, and having. Yeah, they're trying. What we're seeing is a portion of the player base wants their take on society, on religion, on everything to be reflected in the game, and nothing else can exist there. So that would be off-putting to anybody else who isn't an activist liberal SJW, no matter who they are. I think
it's called Vampire the Masquerade. If you want to play, just play Vampire. If you want your leftist views, play the gangrel gay Muslim. And go play that.
Here's an idea, or here's a better idea. If you don't like the existing roleplay games, make your own. Be original. Be original for once in your goddamn political lives. Be original for once. And create your own
You're
goddamn
asking
content.
too much now.
Create your own goddamn content. I'm sick and fucking tired of it. I'm tired of you taking pre-existing content and altering it to fit your needs. It's not. What's that phrase they like to use? Oh yeah, it's not for you. Then is it? That's
here's what you do.
With all these other fandoms, that's what they've been throwing at us this whole time. when they've been altering our fandoms. If you don't like our new version, then it's not for you. Well, guess what? If you don't like our original version, it's not for you. Go make your own. I hate to say that because it's supposed to be inclusive, but they're the ones trying to make it less inclusive. You want it to be less inclusive? Go make your own. Go make your own. Do it. Go make your own
Okay.
less inclusive world. Leave us
Okay,
to
Citrine.
ours.
Yeah, you're right. You're repeating. It's like screaming at a wall at this point. This is kind of how I feel about it. You know what? Again, what I said earlier was basically I feel like it's little kids, it's the younger generation going, well, I want a version of Dungeons and Dragons, and that's what it is. Now that's fine. In my mind, I look at it like this. Okay, great. Just keep reprinting the old stuff so we can get our old stuff, and you can, go play your version. And that's what it is. This is the same thing with what's going on with Pathfinder. There was never supposed to be a second ed of Pathfinder. They legitimately said, we're not doing a second ed of Pathfinder. They're doing a second ed of Pathfinder. It's pissed off a lot of the fan base because a lot of the fan base has been sick and fucking tired of having their fucking books constantly being pulled from them and not having everything finised.
Well, I'm sorry
Like
to
the
bring
only
this
thing
up
that
again, but
Yeah.
they're making the second version, which shouldn't exist. But guess what? Now, unless there's some real pushback, people are going to
Oh,
buy
there
it
is
anyway.
actually.
People are going to buy
Yeah,
it. They're going to make the money. That's what's going to happen.
I know.
And
I know.
I've said this. We've said this in another stream. If you're a true Bond fan, if you love James Bond, you will not pay to watch the upcoming movie, considering what that asshole of a director said about it. So,
and we've brought it up. Yeah, we've brought it up ad nauseum. But like I said, it's that screaming at the wall situation.
yeah,
And
but I'm
like
just
I
saying,
said, we have seen fans.
geeks have the power to,
Yeah.
fight back with their money. But just like in the playground, they're letting themselves get bullied. Like, is there anything you're not going to get bullied over? Come on, it's simply a case of not paying for it. Why do you need to see it? You don't have to buy the game, and you don't have to be like, oh, I've got to play it so I can judge for myself. No, if you know it's shit, and it's written on the wall. Just don't put yourself through that.
Well, this is why I've went back to second. This is why I've made a decision because the second ed is the most completed version of Dungeons and Dragons that ever fucking existed. I've gone back. I've gone totally back to second ed. Now, the only thing I wish I had a more El Qadim stuff because I'm missing some of the El Qadim stuff, unfortunately. And thank you, whoever decided to kill the trove. I've lost a way of getting some of those PDFs so I can finish my El Qadim setting.
El Qadim,
but
that's Arabic for the elder.
Yeah, that's the setting actually. It's called El Qadim. And I want to get the rest of it so I can finish off the set, so I can finish off my own personal game world. And I wouldn't mind getting some of the other stuff, but it's just as a whole, it's been insulting. So now the big question is, do you think 6E is going to get? Are we going to have the 6E woke thing that might come out? Where I've heard a couple things from a couple people. I don't know if this is true, but I have heard that 6E is going to be nothing but the furry races. It's going to be like tabaxi, bird thing, bird person, and like those other races, the dragonborn and all that shit, and humans. Yeah, and humans, and that's it.
I'll tell you one thing. If they do everything that you say they're planning to do, they're going to face a huge backlash. And let me explain. So you guys remember the Sonic movie that came out a few years ago, right? The Sonic the Hedgehog with him being CGI that came out a few years ago, right?
Yeah.
You remember what happened when they introduced the first design of Sonic and how Sonic's fans went completely ape over that?
Yeah.
Remember? And then it got so bad that they redesigned Sonic, but it paid off. Remember? Fan outrage can change things. So if they do this, if they do all that crap, you got to understand, Dungeons and Dragons has been around longer than Sonic and probably has a larger fan base. If the true Dungeons and Dragons fans were to stand up against them, this could stop.
But they won't.
Yeah.
They won't because look.
That's what needs to happen.
They
Wait,
won't because
no, go
we
ahead.
already left in droves twice. First time was in around 2006, 2007 when the OSR came up, old school
Yeah.
Renaissance, and people started making retro clones. A lot of players just abandoned everything new even then before the woke stuff. And then there was also fourth edition helped drive that too. That caused the
Yeah. A
problem.
lot of
That's
the old school,
around the
like I
same
hate to say
time
it.
people went off
Yeah.
to play Pathfinder. That's why I'm wondering what'll happen if Pathfinder's new edition. I haven't heard about that. I know it's different and there's some
Oh yeah,
issues, but
it's drastically
yeah.
different from what I've heard, and it's the same thing with what's going
Um,
on with Vampire. Like I hate to say it, do
so
you know? Go ahead.
well, so much of the modern demographic, the main player base for 5e and like D&D and Wizards proper, it's like Critical Role fans and people like like that. I mean, there's old time gamers mixed in too, but I played
Oh,
like
that
3 years
number is
of Adventure
disappearing
League.
faster and
Yeah,
faster. Like,
but yeah, in terms
like,
of like getting rid of all the
yeah,
races except for basically weeb races, I could
yeah.
see them doing that. I mean, they've like looking at like who is playing Adventure League, the in store and in convention kind of. You'd be hard pressed to find a party that had a dwarf, elf, or halfling, and it's like, okay, I'm playing a human. It's everyone else is a something. Okay, But yeah, that's
Yeah,
gotten more. They're
I
probably
know. I
looking at
sat down. Yeah, I just sat down at a table recently, because I'm in a debate about actually doing professional GMing, which I'm actually shocked the fuck that's a real thing, as an actual
I know
job.
what you mean.
Look,
And
going back to fan backlash. It's
okay,
happened a few times. It's happened very few times. No, I guess I can count it with one hand, at least the ones I know of. But for the most part, in my experience, I've seen people just accept shit and call it ice cream. I mean, when Transformers
no,
Animated first came
in
out, it's like,
second ad,
how could anyone say, "Oh my god, it's great. Look at the art style for that show. It's terrible." And now people are like,
yeah,
"Oh, look at the Cal art style." They're like accepting that as legit cartoons. Whoever invented that should be castrated.
yeah, I know. I don't like
I
using
mean,
CalArts because it comes from, but yeah.
But they
Go
use
ahead,
it,
sorry.
and people still make it. Look at the new Ninja
No,
Turtles
I
cartoon,
mean the
Rise of
name
TMNT.
I mean the name
I
CalArt
mean,
because of what it means.
CalArts is definitely not what Walt Disney envisioned when he created it, but I digress. His company is
Mhm.
not what he envisioned when he created it. But again, that's
Oh, he'd be
digressing.
spinning in the grave.
Right. He's not just rolling in his grave. He's spun so many times. He's got his clothes wrapped around him in tatters. I mean,
Yeah.
anyway, but we're moving on. Moving back to, but yeah, no, fan backlash needs to happen.
Mhm.
We as fans need to be louder than that crowd. We need to
Yeah.
be louder than them.
Yeah.
They're not that big. They're not that numerous. They just seem like it because Twitter is echoing them as loud as they can.
Yeah.
And this is not okay. We as the actual fans need to hit them where it hurts, in the wallet. We have to also
Mhm.
remember this. Stats for sales can be changed on the computer before they're put out there for public consumption. It
Yeah.
happens all the time with polls. It happens all the time with other things that
Darkfire's
they don't
daughter.
want the public to know. If you look, for
Yeah.
example, at Rotten Tomatoes is constantly fluffing up their scores. We
Mhm.
know those scores aren't that high because they jumped ridiculously in a short period of time in a ratio that doesn't seem fair. We know this is happening. They're padding their results to make themselves look better. They may
Mhm.
think they're doing well, and maybe these stats that are fake are being shown to the bigwigs because the bigwigs don't actually pay attention. I'm sorry, but they don't.
Mhm.
Speaking of
They're
Rotten
just shown
Tomatoes,
the numbers. They're shown the numbers and they sign off on it. That's what they do. And so
Okay.
it's easy for some idiot to walk into an office and be like, "Hey, boss, look at these numbers. We need you to sign
Yeah.
off on this." Boss is like, "Oh, this is great. Okay, done."
Yeah. But as
Like,
Dungeons and Dragons, it's a little bit different with D&D. D&D is not Star Wars. Let's be fucking honest. Trust me, it's never been Star Wars. What's
no,
happening in Dungeons and Dragons is what the weird thing with D&D is this. It's a
look at
different beast on many levels of geekdom.
uh,
What's happened for a lot of people, for a lot of old people, like what Morg is talking about, what we're talking about, The old guard's gone. A lot of us that were playing, and a lot of us that were playing, and even those who are third edition and onward, a lot of us old guard have rolled the fuck back out of the system. Like who's playing Dungeons and Dragons right now is a lot of younger people. Like, yeah, they're doing stuff. There are actually people out there that are creating their own Kickstarter content. This is what I got to say about D&D as a whole. These guys, Wizards of the Coast, has got to be careful because there's the Grim Hollow setting that just came out. That's 5e, wink, wink, adjacent, wink, wink, wink. And that's a completely different fucking setting based on a completely different fucking archetype. And that's what's slowly growing. What's growing now is the Fallout mentality. Fuck Bavista. We're going to make our own shit, and you can't do anything about it. If they don't watch it, they're only going to get the new players, and the new player numbers are dropping fast.
Well, speaking of new players, we've for a moment we had Kingstyle join, but apparently he's left.
I think he might be having technical difficulties because he's tried to get on like 3 or 4 times now. So yeah, he's gone off and on like 3 or 4 times.
Yeah. So that's kind of the fun. And unfortunately, we're coming up to the last little bit here. But
then I have to ask then, if the old guard is leaving, then why do we care? If the old guard is leaving behind, then why is it a big deal that it's changing?
It's the same thing with Star Trek. It's the same mentality that we have with Star Trek. Do you think the next geners are watching fucking Discovery? We feel that you're taking something that was a legacy and you're going to kill it. And it happened with Enterprise. It really did happen with Enterprise. It happened with the crash of the tabletop crash that happened in the 90s. That we feel like our thing, something that was great, is going to be dead, buried, and forgotten. Great example, not Battlestar Galactica. I can't even remember the name of the series. There was a space series, not Battlestar Galactica. Fuck, I can't remember the name of it. That's how dead it is.
Kingstyle, can you...
Babylon 5. It's dead.
Oh, yeah.
I remember Babylon 5.
It's dead, though. How many people remember? Yes, we remember Babylon 5. Yeah. Does anybody from the future generation remember Babylon 5? That's why it's not... This is... Sorry, go ahead.
As an IP or a brand or a cultural phenomenon, because B5, it was more niche. It wasn't Star Trek, but it was great. Yeah, it's kind of gone. I mean, it just didn't go anywhere, and for probably different reasons than some like Star Wars or D&D. But yeah,
that's my example. That's my example. Something long since dead. We're trying to say, idiots.
To put it to for like normies or mainstream people that if we were talking to them, not that we are, I would say, imagine if you grow up being a lifelong New York Giants fan and you're like, your grandpa like went to games and then just one day the New York Giants are gone. It's not going to feel good, even if you're not personally watching them because you're done with the NFL. It's a part of
Yeah, that's exactly right.
It's close to home. It's changed.
Yeah, it's close to home. It's like the murder of Doctor Who. And
I get that, but here's the thing. You just said that the reason the fan base isn't going to be able to fight back is because the old guard is leaving. What does it matter then? Who's going to fight if the old guard won't? Because the new people don't know.
For me,
I'm going to die. D&D will die. I'm sorry, but that's the truth. If the old government is leaving, then D&D will die.
But here's what we're saying. Go ahead.
The big company and the actual brand, it's gonna, because of what it is, it'll live on for like the Star Wars community, for example. After a point, if they ruined it so bad, you can never watch it again. Well, yeah, the point, you can only there's the expanded universe, but in terms of the movies, you can only watch the original trilogy so many times before there's not, that's always great. But with D&D, with D&D, there's decades of material out there. You can make your own too. So we all fled back to that,
Yeah, I know,
older
but why? But
editions. I
her
mean, that's
question is why should the old guard give a shit if they're gonna burn it to the ground? Well, it's just, and to your point, it's like the New York
No,
Giants thing.
no.
Okay, cool.
My question is, why are we even talking about this if we've already decided the old guard isn't going to fight? Because if the old guard
Well,
doesn't
no,
fight, it's dead anyway.
no. The old guard. Here's what the old guard's doing. The old guard is closing their wallets. We are fighting by closing our wallets,
Yeah.
by going back to the older generations. That's how we're fighting. We're doing exactly what they're saying. The problem is our fear is that the new people, the new fish, are going to come in, see the game as it is, and act like complete schmucks with it, and then it's going to die, and then there's going to be nothing altogether. We are fundamentally fighting. We are fighting. Like I refuse to buy anything 5e. I refuse to buy Grim Hollow. I might work on some supplements with some people, but that's as far as I will go. I will not support the new edition. And unless I see a drastic change, I won't support anything. Oh, I'm not even going to buy the fucking video games. Like, if I buy a video game, it's going to be bought like the old school Baldur's Gate.
It's really that simple. Just don't buy stuff you know you'll hate. I mean, I haven't watched a single Transformers movie after the third one. Sorry, Bayformers.
Yeah.
Not even Bumblebee.
And let me give you another way. Let me give you another way that you can stop it. If you don't want to just hit them with this product, hit them with every product. There's certain companies today that I will remain nameless because it might set someone off on a tirade. There's certain companies, I don't buy their stuff brand new anymore. I buy it used at yard sales, at secondhand stores. I mean, I don't mind mentioning Disney. I don't buy anything Disney anymore new, not even their toys. I don't buy anything Disney, period, because I do not agree with the direction they've chosen to go with the company. There, like I said, there's another company here in the United States, in Texas, that I'm not buying any of their products either. I'm buying them used. I don't even buy video games like Sony. I'm not buying your stuff anymore. I buy it used. I go to places like Disc Replay. By the way, look them up. Great store, great content. I go to Disc Replay and near my hometown, and I pick up used games there. I do not buy new content from these woke companies. I will not buy I won't even buy their old stuff that I like. If I buy their old stuff that I like, I buy it used, and that's how we hit them. Because when you buy it used, they don't get any of that money. The proprietor gets that money. The proprietor of the store gets the profit. It's like a yard sale. You go to a yard sale.
It's the same thing that's happening with comics. It's the same thing what's happening with comics. Like, at Comics Gators and anyone who's part of that community, we are seeing the war happen. It is happening. We are fighting back by going to the older
have
stuff.
A market? People.
Yeah.
So many articles keep saying people have turned to manga for their.
No, comics do have a huge market. The comic book stores are still fucking open. I still like. Well, I used to buy new content. I know I go every 3 months. I'll go visit my comic store, and I will go say to the guy, "Hey, you got your Savage Sword of Conan open yet? Hey, do you got any new Conan Savage Sword?" And I'll buy a couple issues of Savage Sword. And
I'm really glad you brought
buying
that
the
up,
old stuff.
actually.
What?
I am really glad you brought that up, because even though I'm advocating for boycotting new stuff, I beg you, go to those comic book dealers and buy the vintage stuff. Go to those comic book dealers and buy the stuff you know you like. Most of it is there on wholesale or resale or whatever. Most of it is used and repurchased by the person. So a lot of those products, even though they might be newer, they're not exactly probably new. And so you're probably not supporting the company more than you are your local stores, because local businesses always need as much support as we can give them, guys. So try to help them out whenever you can by buying the stuff they had, especially the stuff they've had for a while that you've had your eye on. So that's my little PSA.
That's a good point. No, I agree. And if you like comics, there's a lot of good old stuff, and there's probably, arguably for most of us, so much so you won't run out in your lifetime going around to stores and buying stuff from the 70s or 80s or earlier. Yeah.
Like, there's over 2,000 X-Men comics before we even get to year 2000. Like, if you count X-Men, X-Factor, Uncanny,
good
Yeah.
stuff. Good stuff stays fresh, no matter how
Yeah.
much time passes.
And that's what. See, that's the biggest sad thing about this, and that this is going to be my final point, and we can do final thoughts to everybody. My saddest point to this is that, to me, I'd love to open my wallet. If they made 6E and 6E was all fucking old school second ed stuff, and we're gonna hammer away, we're gonna open up the library and sell these books, and they're not gonna sell them for over $70. Fuck you, don't oversell it. I'm all in. I'll fucking buy the books. I'd instantly buy the books. I'd be there with my fucking tail wagging because I lost a lot of my content. And I'd love to pick up more second ed books. I'd love to have a fucking library, a massive books. Like, I got a fucking bookshelf. I'd love to fill that full of books. But it's sad to see it the way it's going, and I really hope it doesn't go this way. But I really think it is. And from what I heard, it's going to be humans and a lot of furry races. And nothing against the furry folk. It's just the honest truth that we're going to have dog people, cat people, and dragons, half dragons. Okay, so final thoughts. There are mine. Serene, go ahead. We'll give you the first final thoughts.
So like I said, as far as inclusion is concerned, you guys are making it less inclusive with your SJW bullcrap. And like you like to say, if you don't like it, maybe it's not for you. You need to create your own. Furthermore, for the fans of anything, from Dungeons and Dragons to Disney to whatever is changing that you're not happy with, go purchase the old stuff secondhand. Teach them a lesson through the wallet by buying other stuff, and boost the indie comics, boost individual creators. Do everything you can to show them that you're not happy, because the only thing these people understand is money. And as far as what we like, we can hold, even if Dungeons and Dragons disappears tomorrow as we know it, we can still hold on to what we love about it. We still have our books, we still have our lore, we can still enjoy it in our way, and to hell with what they think, because they don't own us any more than they, own our memories or our love of the content. And so what I would say is, do your best to enjoy it your way, and don't support these idiots. Don't support these idiots by buying into it. And we can win this. We just have to show them by speaking out the right way, the most effective way. Because screaming on Twitter, going on Facebook, that's not going to do it. We have to band together in the only way we can, and that's by tightening our wallets or shopping elsewhere. And that's my final thought.
Okay, more. Go ahead.
Yeah, big companies listen sometimes. I think it might be a while for Wizards, but we're unfortunately living in an era where Games Workshop responds to customers better than Wizards of the Coast does for like the last several years running. Speaking of which, just buy Space Orcs. Buy as many Space Orcs as possible, everyone. Space Orcs are very non-woke. You can never have too many. But yeah, it's I agree with a lot of the points, and I'll try and. I probably should have just given my time to someone else. I talk too much anyways, but thank you. Next person.
Okay, Dragon, go ahead. Final thoughts. Do we have Ethereal still here?
Yes, he is. Seems to be having technical problems. Or maybe that's it. He has no thoughts because everything is just so bad. I don't know.
Okay, is that your final thoughts, Dark?
Well, it's pretty much what Serene said, but let me be more harsh about it. To all the people.
Be careful. No, don't go too hard. Go ahead.
Okay, so my final thought is, stop being a bunch of pussies. Grow a pair. Don't be like, oh, I have to see the latest Batman Superman movie. Fuck off. You don't need to see Zack Snyder's bullshit. He's a shit director, you know it, but you went to watch it because Superman and Batman's on the title, or Justice League's on the title of his piece of shit movie. If it's shit, if the movie stinks, just don't go. If the game stinks, don't buy it. If anything is shit, grow a pair, stop being pussies, and just look for your entertainment elsewhere. There's lots of other places you can look that doesn't have that shit that's pissing you off. What's pissing me off is that you people don't have balls. Ha!
Yep. I know that feeling.
I mean,
well,
I've
I
got
guess
more balls than them, and I'm female, so.
and that's saying something. So as 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 it all goes, I'd like to thank everybody for our little D&D talk. How the Dungeons and Dragons controversies. I don't know what else to say. Like the lore speaks for itself, ladies and gentlemen. Read. Not to say something kind of thing, add a little tidbit to it, but for the love of fuck, read a book. And yeah, exactly. Read a book. And I'd like to thank again everybody. That is our things. I feel tired after this. I want to take a nap because I finally got to vent some of this bullshit out.
Yeah, go to sleep, old man.
Yeah, old man's got. Yeah, I'm not the oldest one in the Discord right now, and I feel exhausted.
For the first time ever.
For the first time ever, I'm not ancient. So, I yes, again, it's just support your local comic book guys, support your local video store if you still have them, and you know, remember to spay and neuter your cats. That's it. That's it. Thank you very much, and I hope you enjoy.